we're going to talk about how to do clinical research at UofL Health. And in the future, we're going to try to, try different sites at the VA Medical Center and also at Northern Healthcare. But today we're going to focus on UofL Health. So I have three superb speakers for you today. So the first one is Misty Hopper. Misty Hopper is the director for research at UofL Health for many years, and she oversees a 10 to 12 people team. So this is the office for you to interact for research at UofL Health. And the second speaker is Rachel Sheppard. Rachel is executive director for clinical trial units at the University of Louisville, and her unit, the CTU, oversees over 70 to 80% of all the clinical studies that's being done by UofL. And the third one, definitely not the least, is Dr. Christopher Cummings. So Chris is the Chief Operating Officer for the newly funded, it's not that new anymore, it's almost 2 years, Louisville Clinical and Translational Research Center, the LCTRC. This is the center funded by National Institute of General Medical Sciences with over $24 million funded. So Chris oversees the day-to-day operation and work with Dr. Klein and myself on the strategic portion of the center. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Hopper to start. Chris and Rachel, how do you all want to determine the sequence? Is Misty going to talk first, then Rachel, then Chris?
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
That's fine with me.
Okay. All right. Misty, this is all you.
Okay. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Hopefully you can hear me and not my beagles upstairs. I apologize. I'm going to try to share my screen here. I won't be able to keep up with the questions, I think, if there's any questions in the chat. If we want to save them to the end, that's fine. If somebody wants to let me know, just that's okay as well. So thank you all for...
Yeah, sorry, Misty. So everybody, we'll keep the questions at the end after all three speakers. So Misty, please go ahead with your presentation, and we'll take all the questions once everybody's done.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all. So my hope is that everyone that's attending today, that you'll get a better understanding of what the healthcare system's role is during the conduct of your clinical research. As the healthcare provider, we have a lot of rules and regulations, federal, state levels, contracts, things that we have to comply with. And, it really does take a village. And that continues to evolve as your clinical research moves through the various stages of completion. I like the verb conduct, because I think it's appropriate in research. You have a principal investigator that's overseeing all of the regulatory and financial and clinical teams for them to work together in harmony and recognize their cues at the right time when needed, with the hopes of creating this symphony of successful research that has a lasting impact to our patients and shapes the future of patient outcomes in our community. So hopefully we're on the right track. These are the objectives for today. After attending this session, I hope that you'll be able to recognize when your research involves UofL Health, to help identify the activities that require UofL Health resources, to be able to submit a study to our UofL Health Research Office, to describe our health systems review process, to be able to create a plan to meet the UofL Health requirements throughout the conduct of your study, and to have the right service accounts and know who to contact when assistance is needed. So here's just a basic overview of what our UofL Health System review process is. As I said, there's many layers of rules, regulations, and policies. We spend a lot of time identifying and ranking the risks with the hopes of developing a plan that's going to mitigate those risks in the most practical ways. We call this due diligence. It's really our best effort to avoid the issues or problems that may arise. And the UofL Health Research Office, that's the office that I lead, we're the gatekeepers for clinical research, and we're tasked with ensuring that all the requirements are met and that the impacted areas are aware before we issue an institutional approval letter for the applicable facilities. So that includes vetting the people, how we're using the data, which resources, which patient care teams. Does it involve equipment, or do we have a marketing plan that we would like to implement? And then, of course, the legal requirements and the funds flow. Those kind of vary depending on what our level of involvement is, but this is a summary of everything that we're trying to figure out at the beginning so that we can have successful research. This is the Code of Federal Regulations. So it recognizes the risk that institutions have. So 45 CFR 46112, it really states clearly that it's a complex environment, and the business models that exist vary between the different institutions. So it may be one of the shortest CFRs, but it really is saying the institution can mandate or have requirements in addition to what the IRB does. But we cannot approve anything that the IRB has not. I can remember when I started in research down the street many years ago, somebody saying, if you can do research in Louisville, you can do research anywhere. We do have a lot of different institutions and entities involved. So we'd like to have a parallel review process. That definitely makes the most sense. When you're working with the UofL IRB system, it's IRIS. There are 3 places that you need to check inside of that system. So if you select that we're a department, if you in section 2, and you select that our research office is a contact, and then the study site selection. If you do those 3 things, then our service account for research will get notified when there's a submission, and our team will have access to open up the application, see what your application said, and download your documents. Those things can save a lot of time. For external IRB submissions, we do like to be copied as a contact. There's different external IRBs that we work with. Certainly WCG, and Advera, and Sterling. CERB is the one for oncology trials. We like for you to add the research regulatory service account as a contact so that we'll at least get a notice when there's something submitted. Then we can follow up with your regulatory team as needed. Recently, I guess it's been about a year now, actually, the university went live with their CIEHS platform. That's what starts their contracting process or their grant proposal process. And so now there's a way within that system for you to do the same thing and include UofL Health as a clinical campus facility in the performance side. And then also you can include us in the additional notification section for hospital notification. And then again, our research office will get notified that someone has made a submission, and we can log into the system and see the details that the person has input, and then download the documents, which again will save some time and effort on your side. This schematic is a part of one of my SciPoc presentations, and I think it's a good depiction of all the roles that really have to be working simultaneously to start a clinical trial. It's best for them, you can see, to be in parallel. We're involved in all of these. So from the regulatory perspective, I work with the IRB very closely. Studies that have full board review and they involve UofL Health, and I provide my input at the time of the IRB review to try to help streamline that process. Our contracts have different terms than what the university contracts have, but they cannot be contradictory. And of course, the related costs have to be included when you're looking down at the financial. And then, of course, we have this overarching compliance, as I mentioned, our due diligence. It's always best to involve us in your startup process early so that we can try to help keep things aligned between those functions. So depending on your type of study, you'll make a submission to our office. If you just have a retrospective data collection study, then we can probably get everything we need out of the U of L IRB system. But since we're tasked for due diligence for the entire institution, we do have additional questions that we have to ask that are not inside the IRB system or the CIEHS system. The studies that have just retrospective data collection, there's less requirements. They're generally completed smaller or sooner, and they have a smaller study team, so there's less vetting. But if we're talking about a study with a protocol that has external sponsors, there's more paperwork, but those have really been vigorously vetted and approved by the FDA before we could even begin our process. The studies that we see that have the highest risks are the investigator-initiated trials. These protocols have been written by the clinicians, scientists. They don't have the same infrastructure and support. They often require multiple iterations through the IRB, and sometimes through our facility review process as well. So when you submit a study, it could be via IRIS or via CIEHS, or if your financial team is looking for pricing, or if you're working on a grant proposal, you could email the service account, ask for pricing. There's many ways that we can start the submission process, but at the end, we have to collect all the required documents, which vary depending on your type of study and the funding scenario. We will send you an acknowledgement email, and it'll have a link to a survey, which is all the questions that we need to answer for that type of study. This is a swim lane that I try to keep updated. I've had it for a few years with the creation of UofL Health, trying to depict how clinical research, clinical trials get started between the university and UofL Health. You can see there's a lot of moving parts. So there's roles of the study sponsor at the top. They're working with the university departments who are in the next swim lane. We have the university official Office of Sponsored Programs. That's your CIEHS submission, working on contracts. And then we have our office, our research office, that's really trying to get to the nuts and bolts of what is going to happen in our facilities, which area of the facilities, who are the people that need access. This is a pretty complex process, as you can see just by looking at the chart. There's a lot of factors that come into play, and there's a lot of steps. So I like to portray this and provide it to be transparent and really try to get to a more efficient process. Some of the things that can take a long time if your study team is not properly vetted, depending on their level of work inside our facilities, there's a lot of regulations and policies that we have to adhere to allow people in our clinical areas. When people just need access to systems, it's less rigorous. But depending on your role and your study, you could need access to the buildings via a badge, and access to the patients, or just the systems. But again, as the gatekeeper for UofL Health, we're responsible for tracking all of the research personnel that are working in our clinics, in our hospital facilities and outpatient centers. I think we have about 1,640 right now that are working on research in various capacities. And so our office will work to make sure that your people have what they need, that they can get the access to the EMR systems, that they have the proper training in some cases. We try to work to get tip sheets for using Cerner. There is formal training for using Epic. And then, of course, we have a lot of providers who work in research. They're vetted through the medical staff office. We even have nurses who have allied health professional status. They're vetted through the medical staff office. So the pieces that we vet are a little less than the others, but we have to hold ourselves to the same standards. And then we have external people. So if you're thinking of maybe a study monitor who would need to come into the facility for a monitoring visit and look at the EMRs, or if you have a device trial and the rep wants to be in the actual OR, those vendors have different vetting requirements. Gosh, we realized probably 25 years ago the number of researchers that actually need access to patients to fulfill their mission as a student, or in the School of Medicine as a faculty member. They have support teams. There's a lot of people that are involved in research that aren't providers. And at the time, CAPS was required. That process took so long, and it costs a lot of money. And so we all came together as the collaborative research group and came up with this model in the downtown Louisville Medical Center that the institutional research offices would be able to vet people to a certain level. And this is what we have still today. Level 1 is a person who needs access to PHI to fulfill their research obligations. We've been able to increase that to allow access to specimens that were previously harvested as well. You see the requirements that are there. They have to give us an application, the information security access form. We have to have a government issued ID and then their affiliate ID. So today's audience would be their UofL staff or student ID. We have an annual TB declaration, proof of a flu vaccine, the criminal background check. We get to rely on those when they're completed by the university. We're working now with HR to get those on our side. They have to be IRB approved on a study. So they have to meet the requirements of the IRB and complete those trainings for human subjects protection and HIPAA, to make sure that they know all the rules and regulations before we can grant them access. And we're working with IT to allow that access to be remote. We have a lot of year 1 and year 2 medical students that are working in this role, supporting faculty, physician scientists. So then we have the next level, level 1B. It has all the same requirements, except they also have to have malpractice liability insurance. So we work with the School of Medicine and KMERG, and we get the people added to the policies when they need to be added. And then they can come into the facility and they can have limited patient contact. They can recruit patients. They can complete the informed consent process, administer questionnaires, observe the patients, patient collected specimens. So sputum, stool, urine swab, those sorts of things. This allows the researchers to work within our facilities and us to be in compliance with Joint Commission and all the other requirements that we have to have so that we can quickly open successfully and complete studies. So now we move to the patient data. We have two EMR systems. We have Cerner for the hospitals and the hospital-based clinics. And then Epic is for our outpatient clinics, also for the professional interpretation and the billing for ULP billing locations. There is a lot of information that flows between Cerner and Epic, but not everything. And so we're still working as a health system to get things streamlined, and to improve our research functionality. But to have access to patient data in any of those scenarios, if it's outpatient or inpatient, and you need to see patients or screen for patients for your study, then you're going to have our approval to do that. And you need to have an IRB approved HIPAA authorization for research. And so sometimes we say a valid HIPAA authorization. And what we mean by that is it has to be approved by the IRB of record. So we want to make sure that the people who are doing it have been trained and that they're on the IRB application and approved by the IRB, but also that either it's a complete waiver for retrospective reviews or a partial waiver when you're going to be screening in our facilities. And then with that partial waiver, once you've identified someone to approach, then there should be a consent form that has the full research authorization in there. Those are absolutely requirements that we have to have and that we want to document that we're adhering to. We also have scenarios for preparatory to research. The way the HIPAA regulations were written, we can provide information at a summary level that won't identify a person, a patient, but you can ask and give us, 3 diagnoses. I want to know patients with heart failure over the last 2 years that were seen at Jewish, or I need to know the number of cases of people with high blood pressure who take this medication, so that we can try to get you a preparatory, you're writing a protocol, but a data set that will let you know if it's something you could move forward with. Those requests come through our office as well. We have established a HIPAA secure place where data can be shared. So when we're working together and collaborations between the university and UofL Health, we put those on our SharePoint site, and then the UofL folks get access, and that's where they can work together and store research data that has come from, our patients' EMR systems and their patient charts. I understand also that the university has REDCap on their side, and that is also HIPAA compliant. I'm not sure exactly the processes of getting a UofL Health person access on that side, but I know that we are all working collaboratively to make these improvements to the process. Data and images. So there are a lot of projects where really you just want a one-time data dump, so to speak, a large data set for a specific group of people. After you have your IRB approval, we can help you get that data. We do have this service account research report. We've recently, on our side, implemented an AI governance, IT governance and AI committee. And, from that committee down, they're really wanting all of the AI models. They have to have de-identified data sets, and they have to be a closed model. So those are some things that are developing. But we do have that service account for research reports. So when we talk about our facility review, so we've talked about people, we've talked about data. We have a facility review process, as I mentioned, just to make sure that everyone is aware. So we have established a clinical research review committee. We met with the university officials, with our UofL Health service line leaders, and worked for a couple of years to come up with this committee, really to determine the study's impact on normal patient care operations. So we're striving to improve that communication, ensure that the clinical teams know who the research team is, what they're expected to do for the study. And one of the challenges that we have here, honestly, is for the study teams to know what their protocol requires. Sometimes those things just don't get fleshed out till the end, but we're trying to catch these things in the beginning so that we know how to plan for it. There was I guess a little pushback in the beginning about this extra review, but honestly, if we spend a couple of weeks in the front end and we find a solution, then it's much better end result. In my experience here, I think we've had 2 studies that didn't move forward. So we're all really wanting to support the research mission. You just have to communicate and figure it out. Where are these patients? Where are they going to be seen? What can the study team do? What is required? So we have patient care team across our service lines and across the facilities. So our pharmacists don't only do research, they have normal pharmacy jobs. Our imaging techs, they also have to schedule and deal with all the normal cases, and the research is just on top of that. So this is a really important step for us to work together to identify everything that's involved. Often from those conversations and that review process, there will be study specific requirements. So it's not a no, you can't do it. It's yes, you can do it. This is what we're going to do. Maybe you can only schedule on Tuesdays. Maybe it's only 4 patients, or maybe we have to have advance notice. That the things will vary with your specific protocol. And then the last thing on this slide, physicians. The attending physicians and the patient care teams, they absolutely need to know that this patient is a research participant. And so we really have to stress the importance of documenting the activities in the EMR, putting the informed consent copy in the patient's chart. You could do that yourself if you're the researcher in Epic, but you have to work with HIM if you're working out of Cerner. And we're working with that group in HIM to come up with a process to assist that. Sometimes those attending teams really need to have more training and education. The pharmacists handle that step when it's a drug study, but when it's anything else, we really rely heavily on the study nurse and the investigator or sub-investigators to make those connections with the patient care teams. So the next slide is information technology and security. Any type of application or software, device, or equipment that is going to come into contact with our patient's data, it has to be reviewed through IT. Anything that is requiring the IT department to configure something, set up a data feed, anything like that, there's going to be a cost related to it. The IT department has a requirement to submit proposals with a return on investment. The expectation is that costs are going to be covered. Sometimes it requires additional contracts for us as well. I do know from experience that when your project needs longitudinal data, instead of just a point in time, then it's particularly difficult and time consuming to have that done, completed without IT builds. It's really, really hard to do it without that infrastructure and support. So you should plan for those costs. Clinical bioengineering, that's another area when we're talking about studies that have equipment that have to come into the facility and we'll be in contact with our patients, then we need to have that inspected. They have to be tagged, calibrated, they're tracked. We just can't assume that just because it's, the protocol's approved and things are moving forward, that there's a space for this to be stored or the specifications are met. There are often very specific requirements for electricity and room requirements as well. So we really have to get our clinical bioengineering team involved in those to make sure we're identifying problems in the beginning to work through them. Supply chain is another issue. So it's another layer that we have to deal with on our side. If your study requires specific items, consumable supplies or devices, even things that are FDA approved or things that are already in use, that does not mean that it's approved for research. Sometimes there's an additional submission in the simpler is the software system we have, the vendor. Sometimes that submission is required. It could take several months, and we help people identify the the pain points and try to kick that off as soon as we can. But it's that process of requesting the item and putting it in the system. That's the beginning, but the end is a number in the materials management system. And then it's a number in the charge master so that those charges can be tracked for later retrieval. So if it's then the device goes to market, they want to do a case analysis and a contribution margin, then they have the data that they need to do that. So, excuse me. We also have procurement contracts, as you can imagine, like any other healthcare system. We have agreements that help us get lower prices for all the items that we use. We don't have an exclusion for research. So if there's a research project that requires us to purchase something, then it is counting against our case mix. It counts against if we have caps or maximums. There's different scenarios in those procurement agreements that we have to adhere to, but we can only assure approval for those contract issues if it is free. So that's something to consider when you're planning your research, or if someone approaches you for research. If you know that it's something that has FDA classification B and it's an IDE that's approved, but they expect us to pay because a Medicare carrier would cover the cost, that doesn't mean it's going to get approved in our situation. So it's another layer that we try to identify in the beginning so that we're prepared and informed all the way through the process. Marketing, I think, is the last one that we're going to go over. It's really important. Research is our market differentiator, and research is a part of every service line's strategic plan. And so, as with marketing communications everywhere, we're working on a brand, and our marketing team has worked really hard, and they work very closely with the university, and they have their campaigns. They have things planned every month. And so we work really closely with them. What we want researchers to know is, please, in the beginning, think about, is this something that is newsworthy? Is this something that we should be highlighting? Do we have a story here? And not just, are we just going to market for recruiting participants? So we work with marketing, and there's templates that we have. We have a lot of options that we can do to support, but it is another process that we work closely together with a team who helps us, get the plans out at the right time. The goal for research is to have it vetted through our marketing and the IRB and the sponsor, and have all of that approved when the study is approved and activated. We don't want to do these marketing things at the end. So that's why it's a part of our review process in the beginning. Next, we'll talk a little bit about our contracts and the funds flow. The type of sponsor that you have and the study type, that really sets the contract requirements. If your research, is involving drugs or supplies or devices, something that you've talked with someone, maybe you have a contact at a company, or you want to submit for a foundation grant application. If you're getting anything of value, you have to have a contract. There are university requirements, and then there's UofL Health requirements. Almost always, there is an overarching agreement. The clinical trial agreement, we'll call it from this schematic. This is a diagram of a clinical trial, but that's the governing document. That is the overarching agreement. And the funds, the supplies, those are coming from the sponsor to the University of Louisville Research Foundation. And then as UofL Health, we have related contracts. So those contracts depend on, if we're engaged or not and the type of study. We would have a subcontract that has the funds flow from the University of Louisville Research Foundation to UofL Health. We also would have a facility use agreement with the sponsor. There's no funds in the facility use agreements, but there's a lot of terms that we have to agree to. We have to allow them access to our data. They have to be able to monitor We really want them to give us indemnification if something happens to these patients while they're being tested using they're participating in the study and getting these drugs or devices. So there's different tracks for agreements. Just know that they're there. The funds are dictated by that, and there's a process in place at the university. Contracts are not executed until your billing plan is reviewed and approved. So if your research is clinical research and there's dollars involved, it's not going to be signed until the billing plan is reviewed and approved on the university side. This talks a little bit about that. The research office, my team, we issue pricing. So this is the financial part of the track that we looked at a bit ago, the budgeting process. We are going to issue prices for all of the things that are occurring in our facility. So it's the hospital fees, which is called a technical fee, for, let's say it's a CT scan. We have a physician fee, that is the radiologist who's going to interpret that CT scan. Or if we're talking in the case of a surgery, we'd have the OR and the procedure, but then you would have a surgeon and an anesthesiologist, as an example, that are all involved in that one procedure. And then we also have administrative fees. And those are the costs that we have as an institution to support research, but they're not in a patient care billable code. Things like redacting images for a scan and uploading it into the sponsor system, or keeping device accountability or drug accountability logs. All those things are costs. We have a lot easier sell with the service lines that we need their help if they can see a revenue stream. Might not be much. We're not going to cover the whole cost. We're helping to defray it, but we want them to be able to see it so that they're recognizing, leadership, and everyone recognizes they're really doing some work for it. A lot of times they have special training that has to happen, and we have to budget for that as well. All of the documents have to be congruent. So a billing plan includes a coverage analysis document. Some people call it a Medicare coverage analysis, an MCA, but it's really the Bible, so to speak, of everything that has to happen. It's what you have to follow. All the dates, all the times, the visits, the services, where it's going to be done, who's doing it. All those things are laid out so that you're identifying all the costs and making sure they're covered. We're a not-for-profit organization and a state safety net hospital. So we really we can't just, support industry. We really have to try to recoup as many of our costs as we can. We have the consent form that plays a critical role. We really have to make sure that those forms are correct in telling the patient if they're going to have additional costs, what things they can expect to be billed for, and what things are being provided for free. That's an important part. So to continue on billing compliance, these are the things that we cannot bill insurance or participants for. Items and services that are free, that are promise free, that are in the budget, that aren't medically necessary, things that are just for research. On this slide, we want to say this is a change for some of the physicians who were researchers for a long time. Before we had Epic, there were different ways they would bill for their services. Well, now everything is, if it's a billable code and a billing location, it's really has to go through the systems, and it can't be a % of effort, and it can't be paid as a consultant. So you make it through all those things. You get your protocol approved, the consent and the authorization, all that's IRB approved, your people are approved, the service lines are fine, impacts, and then you're ready to start. We have contracts, we're ready to go. There's still some things that have to happen throughout your study. We're going to issue a facility approval letter. You're going to have to keep up with the IRB approved versions of the documents. There's a lot of reasons for those things. You have to keep us informed of your research personnel so they can have the access, or when they leave, we can cut it. There's additional items that are going to be depicted in that letter. And so we just ask that you read it and let us know if you have questions. There are different things that come out for specific studies that we may have to deal with. So really want to just kind of stress that we want you all to read it. We, of course, depend on the study team to help the investigator, but we really want to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page at the get-go. So here are the things that, once we're open to enrollment, there are still functions and things that are occurring in different individuals of the study team. The regulatory person is working with the sponsor or the investigator for protocol changes. Could be a budget or a contract change that may change the CTMS setup. All the patients have to be reported. The activity needs to be documented. That we get patient complaints when these things aren't followed all the way. So there's still work that UofL Health and the research office is working with the study teams to make sure we're staying up with the most recent approved documents and that we're complying with all the regulations. And then for the clinical, we have the pre-screening and the treating. There's data entry in the CTMS. There's different starts and stops for all of these phases. And these things are supposed to be documented in the electronic medical record system. So both Epic and Cerner have places where the study coordinator is supposed to change the patient's status if they're no longer being treated and now they're in follow-up, or if they've completed the study. All of those things are important to maintain throughout the clinical trial or the research protocol. This is another swim lane diagram that shows the patient data. So we have a lot of things moving around here, and documentation in the EMR is critical for everyone to know where these patients are in their treatment cycle, their phase of the study. We have to keep them, they have to be enrolled in the research records. All these things control the monitor's access. So from a covered entity perspective, we have to protect our patients' data. So we're building the shells. You can see this data is moving around. It's imperative that the clinical team documents the consent process, uploads a consent form, documents how, what has happened at today's visit, and all of this information in the systems so that all the data can flow from the study sponsor when they're monitoring. The patient care teams know what's going on, and then we have what we need to grant the access to the people who are working on the study or monitoring the study. And then my last slide is just our service accounts. So we do have one for facility approval for general is research. We have research regulatory. That's our reg team that just sees that. So if you have questions that they can help with on the reg side, they do support nursing research and our pharmacy residency program. We have a research personnel for any people that need access to facilities or records. Then that's the one you would use. And then the billing, anything for financial. And then we have the report service account if you need screening reports or preparatory to research or large data sets. Those are the ways that you can reach us the best. We have a small team of 10, but we're divided by function, and these are always monitored. So that's the quickest way. And that's it. Hopefully I didn't go too long.
Misty, thank you so much for the excellent presentation. I know there's a lot of, for people to really get a full, grasping just through one presentation. So this will be recorded. This has been recorded and will be available for you to review. And also we will, I'll work with Misty to share the slide with everybody too. and certainly with the larger community. I know there's a question from Dr. Gettleman, and we'll answer that once we have the presentation from Rachel. Rachel, you're up next.
Okay, I'm here. Let me just start I need to share my screen. You should be seeing trees. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
You're definitely right.
Okay. All right. So the purpose of my presentation today is just to give you a little idea of the scope and the services of the clinical trials unit. So hopefully I can move through these quickly so that Chris has some time at the end. So currently the clinical trials unit is supporting about 180 actively enrolling trials. We have an additional 35 that are in follow-up status. We serve 30 departments and divisions at the University of Louisville, and we have about 250 study accounts that we're managing, reconciling the financial piece. So we have 53 employees with an average of 5.5 years with the CTU. So we have a lot of people with a lot of time working together as a team. Some of our core services are here. We have the startup support where we handle feasibility assessments, protocol review, budget development, and contract negotiation piece for the payment terms. We have a dedicated startup team to ensure proper intake and management of the project during the feasibility process. Under finance, we develop and negotiate study budgets in collaboration with Misty's team in most cases where they're issuing us pricing. And we base those on actual costs and include the facility and professional costs. Our team ensures compliance with financial and regulatory requirements by creating the billing compliance plans and reporting to the clinical entities on the correct billing for research for each project daily. So we have a clinical trial management system that we use to track our activities, and we report those procedures daily to the facilities so that billing can be done correctly. On regulatory and compliance, we manage IRB submissions and leverage tools such as Adobe Sign, REDCap, and Viva SiteVault for e-consent workflows and standardized study documentation that complies with regulations. These systems also ensure that sponsors are able to review our documentation remotely if needed. We also have standard operating procedures that we've developed over the last 20 years in research that ensure good procedures for adherence to the regulations. So lots of lessons learned over the years and lots of adaptations to new situations. As of 2024, we began full service support for FDA submission as well. So we provide, submissions of INDs, investigational new drug applications, investigational device exemption applications. We provide audit support to all of our investigators, as well as assistance with corrective action plans. So if the FDA comes to audit a study, we're right there with you, supporting you through that process. We have many stopgaps in place to identify any compliance issues, so we can proactively make any corrections needed. We ensure compliance with financial and regulatory requirements just by using the systems that we have in place. Our clinical operations include patient or participant recruitment, scheduling, coordination of study visits, data and sample collection, and drug and device accountability. We also have a full service research clinic that allows for the majority of our study procedures to be performed within the UofL Health outpatient building. So a lot of our follow-up or outpatient studies occur there. So this allows for increased convenience for our patients and investigators that were embedded in that outpatient building. For data management, we use REDCap for secure data capture and ensure rigorous data assurance, quality assurance. We have a nurse informaticist and biostatistics. That word always gets me. Collaborators to ensure our data quality and repeatability is available. And as far as training and education, we provide compliance training such as adverse event and protocol deviation, reporting training, consent training, and ongoing support for investigators and study teams. So these services are designed to reduce the administrative burden and allow researchers to focus on the science. Here's some members of our team. I was like showing that there are actually real people behind these words. I also wanted to take a minute to just clarify Misty's great presentation, just to clarify our role versus Misty's team's role, because I know it can be confusing to folks. The CTU is the team that's working right alongside you as your study team. So we're working on the PI's behalf. We assist with determining if a study can be successful before all the activities start. We ensure development and submission of all the study-related materials to Misty's office. So we work alongside you to submit those to UofL Health and the IRB for review, or to sponsors in the FDA, whomever we need to submit to. We help you respond to all the questions and changes that are requested by your sponsor, IRB, or UofL Health Research Office. And then Misty's office is reviewing what we submit on your behalf. And they provide requested pricing. They review the billing plan for their needs. They grant research personnel access, as Misty went over in great detail. And they review contracts for the UofL Health facility piece and issue facility approval for research. So we cannot do research without UofL Health approval. Very important. I probably won't go through this in the interest of time, but just suffice it to say that we had a work group together with the research office at UofL Health, the research office at the Brown Cancer Center, other collaborators, to come up with a step-by-step process for industry research, and some of this would be applicable to investigator-initiated research, what the steps are, and who could be a potential contact for you to get those things done. So I'm hoping these slides will go out to all the attendees, and you can see the steps here for approval that we go through. So this is the first slide that goes through receiving the study, getting confidentiality or non-disclosure agreements in place, planning for a project and determining whether it's feasible, getting the contracting process started, developing the budget, and then all the documents that we need to obtain or put in place to get that review from the facilities. Then the survey that Misty spoke about that the team completes is the bottom line. Then we have different requirements for devices, drugs, marketing, or IT that need to be looked at. I skipped billing compliance review, which is the first piece. This one is important because CTU has a dual role here. We also act as the institutional oversight for UofL for that compliance review. So we're looking at whether all the documents match, if we have a budget, a coverage analysis, an internal budget, our current version of the informed consent, the protocol, and the clinical trial agreement. We're making sure they all match up on costing, on what the participants' costs will be versus what research will cover, whether the informed consent gives accurate information. All of that occurs during that review. The Clinical Research Review Committee, again, Misty spoke about the various clinical areas within UofL Health that review the research. That is their process to ensure that they can let us know if something isn't going to be able to move forward. We submit for IRB approval. Hopefully the contract gets executed. Again, personnel vetting through UofL Health. And once all of those approvals are in place, hopefully we get activated as a site. We've done a couple of new things at the clinical trials unit to do more to support investigator-initiated research. So we actually developed a protocol review process where we can give more support for ensuring that protocols are robust and they will get approved hopefully faster and with better quality. So once we hear from an investigator that they want to work with us on a project, we're of course putting that in our system, saving all the information and routing those documents to our reviewers. We have nursing informatics and study design review. We work with our biostatistics team on the reviews of the power analysis and analysis plan. And then we give structured feedback to the PI on also regulatory aspects that we might expect to have some questions about. Once we give that review feedback, we're going to go over that with the PI, make sure everything gets updated. And then we have a planning meeting with the whole team. So if we're also providing clinical support or our clinic support, then the whole team meets to make sure that we have everything in place and we move forward with the approval process, which is at the bottom. We also have a lot of transparency in our operations, and we're always striving to have transparency. So if you go to the CTU website, there is an area where you can click on researchers, log in, and see our internal pricing for investigator-initiated research. For obvious reasons, we want that behind a login and not available to just anyone. But in addition, under sponsors, we have our industry sponsored pricing, and it is available for sponsors to review as well. So we try to keep it very transparent so that sponsors know that we're not pulling any shenanigans. We also have a PI portal where PIs can log in on our website and see the activities related to their studies. So just a simple login with the single sign-on gets you to your dashboard. You can see your active clinical trials, your pipeline trials, and any that might be in feasibility status. You see here, I am impersonating Dr. Dryden. So he has 16 active and close to enrollment trials that we're managing. And if I were to click on any of these, then we would get more information about how many people are enrolled, who they are, what stage of the study they're in, what documents are the current approved documents, and so forth. So there's a lot of good information there. In the pipeline area, you would see if we have an approved budget, if we've submitted to IRB, those kinds of pieces of information. And just to finish up, I just wanted to give a little information about our clinic. and this transition's much too fast. So here we have our waiting area where people hopefully won't be waiting. We have patient or participant care areas, including, I'm going to go back again, an infusion area, which is very bright and nice. We have a lot of compliments on that. Our exam rooms are fully equipped, and we have a blood draw area that allows us to get samples. We have a full service lab as well that isn't pictured here. And we have the in-body body composition analyzer. We've had a lot of researchers that are utilizing this for various data points that enhance their research. So just in closing, I would encourage you to reach out if you have any questions about research, if you have any concerns, or if you would like to collaborate. We're always happy to hear from you. So it's very easy. You just email ctu@louisville.edu.
Thank you, Rachel. And what a wonderful presentation, from Ms. and Rachel. I know there's a lot of things, especially for new investigators. However, we have two goals here at UofL Health. We want to protect our patients. That's our first priority, and our research participants, if they're not a patient of ours, and we want to protect you as the researcher. So we'll open up for a couple questions. I know Dr. Gettleman got a question. So the question I think you put in the chat is really regarding whether we have any resources to address the interpersonal issues within the research team. So I'll try to answer this. The answer is usually not. If you do go through CTU, clinical trial units, the good news, you don't have to worry about it. So CTU, Rachel and her team will address all the interpersonal human resource issues for you, because those are their people. And that's why I think as a PI, it's a big plus to use the CTU services on there. We really don't have a counselor or arbitrator at UofL. Those, if it's an RB related issue, RB will review those. And but we usually rely on the department. If you belong to a certain department, you can go to the chair of the department and try to address those. So Rachel or Misty, I think this is more for Rachel. Any other information on this?
I mean, universities, HR is always a great resource if you're having issues. Now, if it's between UofL and UofL Health, that gets a little murky, and may have to get creative figuring out how to resolve it. But generally, HR is the best option.
Sure. Thanks, Rachel. The next question is for Misty. Is there a way to preemptively access the site approval survey, begin the site approval process while simultaneously building the RRB, or will wait for the service account email once UofL Health Research Office has reviewed the RRB? I'll try to answer this one, real quick. So just being fair to other investigators. We really want, for you to get RB approval before you come to UofL Health. However, Misty Hopper actually attends RB meetings, so she knows most of the information. So Misty, this is a question for you, so please.
Yes, I would just encourage you, if you have specific questions, especially about any of the content today, where you are suspecting there could be a snag or a delay in the facility review process, it is best to identify those up front. So we definitely make ourselves available to help wherever we can. You don't have to wait, but it's preferable if you have the protocol, then you would at least provide that to us. It's hard for us to review something if you don't have the documents prepared or ready to go.
Yep. Thank you, Misty. And so the time is up. So we will have Dr. Cunningham at our next presentation. And we're still trying to find the best time. Most likely can be in February 2026. So more information. So if you have any question regarding the Louisville Clinical and Translational Research Center. So we have a course to give you money, a health research course. We have a course to train you, the professional development course. We have a course to do the biostatistic analysis and study design with you. That's actually the co-director, Dr. Mayun Kong, was on the call. So just reach out to Chris. Chris is really our person of contact. So just reach out to Chris or myself, and we'll find the information for you. I really want to thank all of you. I think we hit 43 at one time for attending this seminar, and we will make sure the recording is available for everybody, and we'll make sure we get the slides for everybody. So thank you all, and we'll see you next time.